And so, this wedding symbolizes not just the union of the Scarlet Kingdom with the Kingdom of Lytria, but also of the marriage between myself and my beautiful wife, the new Queen of Lytria.
Ah, there you are, sweetie. I was beginning to think that you had snuck off to plot my assassination, and on our wedding night, no less. At this point, I would hardly be surprised. I'd deserve it. Perhaps. But I'd like to see what you would have done in my position. Be a good king? Oh, but sweetie, I am a good king. I just wasn't your people's king. Well, not until now, anyway. You would do the right thing? What even is doing the right thing anyway? Right for me? Right for my people? Yours? I slayed thousands of your people, some of whom were civilians, but lowering trade barriers by annexing your kingdom saved tens of thousands of my own civilians from hunger. Tell me, was I wrong to want what was best for my people? Wrong to privilege them above your own, simply because they are mine, because they grew up in the same country as me, because I have met some of them? Tell me, princess, would you trade the life of someone you know to save the life of a stranger? How about 10 strangers? 100? Because I know my answer. I would not harm a hair on the head of one of my people to save even 1,000 strangers. How did someone like me become king? Well, as you may have figured out by now, I wasn't exactly born into royalty like you were. Not into the nobility either. Not even as a free man, the child of merchants or skilled artisans. No, I was born in the dirt. A peasant. I grew up to a life of back-breaking labor in the fields. By the time I was 20, all 7 of my siblings had died, either to hunger or to various illnesses exacerbated by poor nutrition. But then something happened. War was declared. Every able-bodied man in my village was levied. I was no exception. I served my lord well, and in battle I killed the enemy commander. For this I was made one of my lord's retainers. I thought the gods themselves had smiled upon me. I'd never have to go hungry again. But the thing with being a career soldier is that you get sent into the thick of battle every time there's a war. And there were so many wars. My invasion was the first time you've been in war, right? It was my 7th. I've lost count of how many friends I've seen die, how many people I've killed with my own 2 hands. I could not see a purpose to it all. All those lives lost so that a few villages would kneel to one king instead of another. And then we lost one. The old king, my predecessor, got greedy. He attacked a kingdom that was far too strong for him, a kingdom that he never should have invaded. In the battle, his son, his only heir, was killed. Furthermore, the king had pushed his luck too far, spent too much money on this gamble. His treasury was depleted, and to make it up, he tried to raise taxes on the nobles. They were starting to grow concerned, and several of them, including my lord, placed their troops outside the palace as a not-so-subtle threat. Not that I knew anything about this at the time. All I knew was that we had been promised pay by the crown, and we had not been paid. One night, I and a few friends got drunk and decided to find out why we had not been paid. We climbed over the walls of the palace and crept inside. Once inside, we split up. As luck would have it, I ended up inside the royal bedchambers, where the king himself was sleeping, an ornate sword resting beside him. I remember thinking that that sword was probably more valuable than the entire village I grew up in, that it was probably worth enough to have fed my family for years. Later, I found out I had underestimated its cost. As I watched the king snore, I was overcome with hatred. Here was the man for whom I had fought, bled, and killed for whom my friends had died, and the reason I could not remember a single year going past without war. A man who slept soundly, in comfortable luxury, while people like my family worked themselves to the bone for him, only to be left with hunger and misery. I took his sword, and I drove it through his heart. And in the morning, still covered in the blood of my late king, I walked into a meeting of the highest nobles in the land, and declared myself king. In the same breath, I also declared that I was cutting taxes on those very same nobles, which is all that spared me from meeting the same fate as my predecessor. And so, here I am, a commoner, sitting upon a throne of blood. Now you know why they call me the usurper and the blood-stained king. I wish they wouldn't call me that. My name is Crispin. Blood-stained king just reminds me of the battlefield. I've already spent far too much of my life drenched in blood. The last thing I want is for it to follow me off the battlefield. I suppose it's just one more way the nobles seek to remind me of my place, to remind me that I don't truly belong in my throne. Calling me an usurper certainly is. But enough about me. We should get back to the party. I'm sure the nobles are wondering where we are. Impressive. I did not know your face could go so sour. Let's stay here and chat a bit longer. No one will have to think long to come up with an explanation as to why we are both missing on our wedding night. Besides, I've spent so much time trying to get inside your head during battle. It would be nice to know you better in a more peaceful context.